Hey y'all, it's Brittany Sade, and you are tuned in to Gems and Tips, where I sit down with gems to give tips on all things beauty and fashion, business and finance, and wellness. And today we are with the Tamara Angela, the fairy godmother. Thank
Hello.
you so much for joining us.
Anything for you?
I love it. All right, so let's just get into it. So, just tell us a little bit about what you do and how you help these people out here flourish.
Flourish.
Yes. I
I'm
mean,
here
that's what
for
you've
that.
done for me.
I'm
So
here for
let's.
that. I'm here for that. So, long time ago, one of my clients just started calling me fairy godmother, and I was like, I kind of love that,
Mm-hmm.
and so it stuck. And that's how I kind of see myself as somebody who kind of comes in with their magic wand and is just like, boop, your light's on,
I love it.
just in case you don't realize that your light is on. Because so many of us kind of go through those periods where, like, we've dimmed our light for people, or maybe it's the light has always been dim and it just needs to come on.
Mm-hmm.
So for me, I call it personal soul development.
I love it.
That's what I help people with.
Okay. Now, I know this is probably a crazy question, but
Never.
does everybody have a light?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah. Everybody is here with a thing that they're supposed to contribute
Okay.
to society, community, mankind. Mm-hmm.
All right. So, what is like one to two of the main misconceptions about spiritual advisors or individuals with spiritual gifts from your experience?
Ooh. Well, I wrote something up a couple years ago, and I was talking about how, like, spirituality is trendy. Um, I think one of the things people are always thinking when they come to me is they're like, oh, she's going to predict when I die. That's never happened. Like, it's just never a thing that has come up in
Okay.
any reading. I'm not God, and so I doubt God would give that to me.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and the other thing I think is that I don't believe in God. That's always the thing that people ask me. They're like, "Who are you talking to?"
Mm.
Um, I think it's a valid question because there are some people out there who don't use their gifts for the right thing. Um, but yeah, people are always just kind of concerned about that.
Okay. And I can see the last one because I know that
Mm-hmm.
when we when we talked, I very respectfully just made sure
Mm-hmm.
that we kind of had the same beliefs because they do have, and I'm sure that there, like you said, there are people out here who use their gifts not necessarily for good. So
Yeah.
it does always like lead to concerns of like, okay, so who are we asking these questions to? Who's giving you your gifts? Like, what are you really tapping into? So I
Mm-hmm.
could see that. Um, so what do you think is like one of the main benefits? I know that you are also a therapist by trade, but when it comes to choosing to speak to a spiritual advisor versus a therapist, or do you think that it is beneficial to have both? Like, what is kind of the difference or the benefit of having a spiritual advisor?
That's a really good question too. So I come from a clinical background of being a clinical social worker.
Mm-hmm.
So that is me. All I've ever done is diagnostic work. When people hear the term social worker, they think I was like going in, like taking people's kids out of their houses. Like
Oh my God.
I've never done that.
Okay.
Never worked that side of things. I've always been the person who works with the psychiatrist. And I do like initial diagnoses for people. So working in the ER, community mental health. There are places that I work that don't even exist anymore. Like it's like I was out there. Um, and so I did a lot of like individual and family therapy, that kind of thing for people, group therapy, stuff
Mm-hmm.
like that. Um, and the one thing that I realized was missing was the spiritual component. Um, I would have people, I mean, because when you're working as a therapist, as a social worker, we're supposed to incorporate the person's whole ecosystem. So everything, family, religious background, like all of that, we have to take that in consideration.
Right.
But there were people that I was seeing, and I was like they don't need medication. Your anxiety is like because you need to get rid of that man,
Oh, hello.
or Like, it's like, it's that job that's driving you crazy. Like, where, like, there's this alternative piece that needs to be added in there that I couldn't incorporate under therapy because you can't bill for it. Like, really, with therapy, I've got to be able to bill your insurance for that. So I love the clinical piece because people need that. But then I am who I am. So I always say I am a psychic medium who chose to be a clinical therapist.
Okay.
I also at one time chose to go get my license as an esthetician too.
Yes, you did.
Either way, I make people feel better. Like, no matter what it is I'm doing, you come, you sit down, you're changed, you leave. That's pretty much what I do with my life. So I figured out that my gift wasn't disjointed from being a therapist. It was what made me a better therapist because I could see you and I could just kind of like probe and dig and just be like, well, did we look at this, or let's pull this out. It's what made me a better therapist. I walked away from therapy because I hated the red tape of billing insurance. I mean, because you could work and then they just say, oh no, the insurance is like, oh, you billed for it, but we're not going to pay you.
Oh. That's not a good feeling.
Yeah. Insurance billing is a hot mess. So I was like, I want to serve people who look like me.
Okay.
And at the time that I walked away, the whole thing was like, you're never going to get people to do self-pay. It's 2024 and that Cash App or that Zelle goes off all the time.
When did you start your own practice?
I think that was like probably 2015 where I was just like, I'm going to go ahead and do this. Because I couldn't kind of walk away from it. People were always kind of coming to me for that. And even when I stepped in to be an esthetician, like I'd have somebody on the table and I'm doing their facial and then all of a sudden they're telling me their life story. And I was like, I did not want to know that with all the aromatherapy going. I just wanted to, do your facial and make it nice. But what I was realizing was like energetically they felt comfortable.
Yeah.
And so I was like, there's something I can't avoid here. What does this look like? And I just started kind of integrating both. And then I had a client one day who came to me for a reading, and she was like, that felt like therapy. And I was like, tell me more. Like, what does
whatsoever
that mean?
Did you mean?
And so she kind of detailed, like, for her how it felt like therapy, and I didn't realize that I was already, like, incorporating both of these worlds. So, yeah, I don't do one-to-one therapy so much anymore. It's really, like, personal development. So it's the spiritual part with a clinical edge to it. If you want, like, straight-up therapy, I have colleagues who still do that, so I refer out because I just prefer not to
tap into that. But it is funny because as women, I know that a lot of us can agree that our hairstylists, our estheticians, our lash girl, our makeup artists, like for whatever reason, y'all just end up becoming our therapists. Like I feel like anybody that's in that trade is like a therapist, or at least they're just getting everybody's business and everybody's information at some point. So I love that you were able to kind of connect all of those things. Yeah. So I kind of want to ask you before we get into other general questions, like how is it as far as people understanding that you have these gifts? Like what is the best part about that? And what is something that's kind of like, oh, my goodness,
I think kind of the eye roll part is more that like sometimes I have friends who are like, maybe they don't want to call or hang out because they think that I'm going to be reading them. I just want to go get fried chicken and twerk at brunch.
Yeah.
I don't really care about your business.
So you're one of those ones that be twerking on the tables in front of everybody's food, and fried chicken and eggs and stuff, or you're not against it?
Not against it.
I love that.
But I just have zero desire to do that. Like when I'm on and I'm paid, then here we go. Otherwise, like I might need you to be my friend.
Yeah.
Listen to me and the stuff that I have going on. I think my tribe pretty much understands that, but there are times where I've like realized I'm like, oh wait, this person came into town and they came to Atlanta and they didn't call. Like, what's going on? And I've had conversations with certain friends where like I may tell them like, oh, this dream happened or whatever, and they're like, oh, that freaks me out. So I know, but then I also have friends who are just like, look, if you get any messages from me, just call me, text me, tell me. So that's kind of hard sometimes because I don't, that balance can be so fine because as like girlfriends, we're confidants. And, I think the best part about it is, and I know this probably looks weird to other people, but just the discernment. Like I'm at that point. I don't know. Probably some of it is because I'm over 40 and all the fucks fly out the window.
Yeah,
so there's that.
Given 40. Where?
There's but the other part is just this, like I have less foolishness in my life. Like I have more of a sense of peace because I'm okay with just looking at that and being like, that's not it.
Yeah.
And not like feeling like I have to give anybody receipts on why I said that's not it.
Yeah, but I bet that's crazy. Like when you be knowing and it's like people be around you, they feel like they can't lie or they might as well not lie because it's like you're gonna know if they're lying.
It's kind of like it's what's weird about it is like I will see somebody and everybody else loves that person and I'll be like, oh, like I've just learned not to really say anything and just let people have what they have. You can like it. I'm just like not gonna love it.
Yeah.
And I've learned not to say anything. Because it always comes out why I didn't like it.
Yeah, it'll always kind of present itself. That is so interesting. So I got to ask you the same question I ask you every time we talk.
On.
So for those of you who do not know, Tamara is my spiritual advisor and has been for some years now. And she is very gifted. But it's a good thing that I bother you less and less because that means that it's been working,
true.
right?
That's true.
Isn't that the point? Or
no, that is the point. That is true,
right?
Yeah,
like you helped me
you've
like turn it on.
less about stuff this year. Like you've had less panic this year.
Yeah, I'm not panicking.
I'm so glad.
As much.
So good. No, you used to panic like all the time.
A lot. I did.
And I'd be like, Brittany, girl, calm down. It's gonna be all right.
Yeah, but I'm a worry board,
Right.
But it was good to have somebody that I trusted to be able to talk through those things. And I did like talking to you because it was like I was getting therapy, but it felt like I was getting an unbiased opinion still from my homegirl.
That nobody else is going to
have,
like, nobody else is going to know that conversation.
Exactly.
Because I'm like a vault for people, like a secret keeper.
Yeah.
And so, like, I'm always that place that people come where they're just like, oh, I can talk about this here, and I know it's not going to pop up somewhere else.
Exactly. Exactly. So let the people know, like, as far as this year, we're kind of in the second part of the year, I guess, like second half of the year. Yeah. Like, what is the theme? What is the energy, like, giving?
Oh, gosh.
At this current juncture? Is it a lot?
Well, so every year, at the end of the year, I do the write-up for the year coming. So 2024, basically this whole decade is one that, like, it's bringing a lot of change. It's bringing a lot of, like, transformation. We have to kind of get rid of the way that we used to operate and kind of lay a foundation for operating in a different way. Not because of anything negative, but it's just like, so, I mean, I'm a child of the 80s, right? So the way that we were raised in the 80s, like, you kind of can't do that stuff now. We live in a totally different world. Like, I used to babysit people's babies. I started babysitting at 12. I kept everybody's kid. I can't think of a 12-year-old I would let babysit.
Yeah.
not in this day and age, but when I did it, that was normal. That was the whole thing. My mother didn't have to be home. People would just bring me their kids and bring me the money. It was a thing. Like, the world has changed, though. We don't operate in the same way. And so a lot of what we have going on is like we have to recognize that some of that stuff is obsolete and kind of clear out those old codes for things. It worked for when we needed it. Now we need different stuff.
Yeah.
A lot of what we need to do is not prep for who we are now, but prep for our descendants. And people are just not understanding that. There's a lot of me, I want, I can do this, I can do that. And that self-serving nature is going to really kick us in the ass if we don't start getting it into gear to really look forward to setting, to leave a space for our descendants that they can be proud of and actually have. Like it's like we're literally destroying stuff.
But that's like the only way to really break the cycles that we talk about, right? Is to kind of plan ahead.
Planning ahead and seeing past your own nose. Like you have to see, like this stuff is for someone else. And so we have to have a sense of community to be able to see that. And the sense of community is just like, it's not there anymore.
It is hard. And so I feel like what would you tell someone who feels like they want that sense of community? Because I think it's becoming even more important now, like that desire for community, but also feeling like where is the community?
I think you have to create what you don't see. That's a huge thing. I think communities exist, but we don't see them because of algorithms. You see what you see, right? So I remember one time on my Facebook page, one of my Facebook friends was like, I don't ever see black men in therapy. Black men don't go to therapy. I said, pause. Black men do go to therapy. You just don't have it on your algorithm because I can give you links to tons of places where I see black men in therapy. Like 40% of my clientele are black men. Black men are in therapy. The question is, why don't you see black men in therapy on your algorithm? It's because you haven't looked for it.
Yeah.
You know, so it's equivalent to like your favorite actor. If you don't follow them, you don't know what they're acting on. So if you don't have HBO, you don't know that they're on a new show and they've been on that show for 3 years. So you're just assuming they're not working because they're not in your field of vision?
Yeah.
That's kind of crazy.
That is
Go actually look the actor up and see where they've been. So communities are out there. I think social media has kind of warped our perception of like friendship, relationships. Like people don't, it's so weird. Like men will hop into my inbox halfway through a conversation and I'm like, bruh, I don't even know you. Like you've never had any conversation with me on any of the posts that I put on my page. And I post a lot of stuff, right?
Yeah.
Conversation, visuals. But you've been watching me. And so now you're like, oh, I'm just going to jump in her inbox. You didn't introduce yourself. I don't know you.
Right.
But so
would they be jumping in there for to try to holler at you, or is it probably a little bit of both?
I realize people wash up to my shore and it's my job to tell them that be like, do you know you're here? Right? Because people are drawn to my energy and that's just what it is. So I have to just be like, do you realize you're here? Hey.
Right.
Like, what do you want?
And then like, why are you here?
Yeah. And so I usually walk them back out my inbox and say like, oh, you know what? I post a lot of stuff on my page. Make sure you join the conversation. And then it gets tough for them to actually like join the conversation. They think liking a bunch of posts or showing up and giving one-liners means that you've given me conversation enough for me to consider you. No. And I think social media has really messed us up with that. Because, but think of it on the good end. Like, I'm an internet auntie. Like, some of my friends have kids. I've never met their kid in my life. But I send cash apps for birthdays.
Yeah.
Or when they're doing, like, graduations and stuff. For my daughter, she has a whole fan club.
Yes, honey. Team Blake is a thing.
Team Blake, it has a whole fan club. And I was just overwhelmed with the fact that they bought out her whole Amazon wish list for her birthday. I was just like, wow. So in one respect, communities are there and they work. And then in another respect, we really got to work on building and strengthening.
And actually communicating
and actually
to build a
communicating
community.
Like in real life.
That is so funny.
'Cause like it's weird.
What is something that you know now that, and this might be kind of an odd question for you because it's probably more so things that you knew that you didn't listen to, but what is something that like you've really realized now that you wish that you had have either accepted or heard at a younger age?
I wish I would have followed my intuition not to get married.
Oh. That's a good one.
No, that was not the right person and it wasn't the right time.
Mm-hmm.
But coming from the generation I come from, it's like time spent equals next step.
Mm-hmm.
So you're dating somebody for X amount of years. They're like, well, what's next? When are you getting married? And then you get married. Well, when are you going to have the kids? And then when are you going to buy the house? Like they have your whole life planned out for you. And what I really wanted was to travel and just maybe like date. But then it was like kind of these pressures. And I remember my mom saying like if you want me to call people and tell them that you're not getting married, I'll do it.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, no, I hadn't already sent out the invitations. And she's like, okay. Like, in that moment, I wish she would have just really been like,
you know you don't want to do this.
And, like, really gave me permission to give myself permission.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I was, like, 23. So that was, like, super young. And it's just, but intuitively, it was like, no. And I was just like, but I have to. And I kind of, like, overrode.
Yeah, and I think that's an interesting thing because I feel like as obviously like your mom, so as family members and close friends, you feel like you want to say something and then you're like, well, let me not overstep. But then there are some times where it's okay to say things because you want to give people like they needed that reassurance. Like, okay, am I on the right track?
Yeah.
Like if your mom had said that, you probably been like, you know what?
Okay.
Maybe we should give out these apologies.
Yeah, like I would.
Like
I
just kidding.
Let her make the call.
Yeah.
Like in retrospect, I'm like, oh Jesus Christ.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But two great things came out of it.
Oh yeah, the kids. Yeah, but oh child.
Yeah. So, okay, well, let's talk about that, like balancing mommyhood and entrepreneur life. What are two things that you kind of keep in mind in order to make sure that you are balancing not just being a mommy and not just being a businesswoman, but also having that time for yourself? Like what key components are important to make sure that you're balancing?
I would like to say that I'm balancing, but just being real, I'm not.
Okay.
Like, I think when we ask that question, and we ask that question in a really legit way, just as women, period, because I don't care if you don't have kids. It's hard to balance your individuality.
Can you
family,
say that?
The things that you want to do with yourself, like, just it's hard to balance regardless, right? I think there are times I do better than others. But there have been plenty of times where my body just was like, no, and it's just a hard stop, and I can't push past the wall.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I have to listen then, and I try not to let it get to that point. I mean, I do practice what I preach with my clients. So, yes, I'm a Reiki practitioner. I practice Reiki. I have my gym membership. I go for yoga classes. I try to do that kind of stuff. Like, I try to disconnect as much as possible. I'm also, like, I'm also becoming, like, the adult caregiver to, like, my dad and my aunt.
Okay.
So, caregiver role again.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, they're 70 and 71. They're right around the corner. So, I'm kind of like, they're like, oh, I need an appointment, or I got to go do this. Like, they're calling me.
Mm-hmm.
So, I've learned to just be like, y'all, I don't have capacity today. Like, I can't do it. I'm literally going to lay in the bed and I'm not going to answer the phone.
Yeah.
Like that kind of thing. But I'm trying to make sure that I don't exhaust myself. But life be lifing.
It does.
Like,
life will life.
Life be lifing, and some of the stuff is just out of your control. So I try. I try to have my conversations with my girlfriends. I try to like show up. You know, it's like, oh, I haven't put on makeup in a while. I need to go outside. You know, I don't necessarily tell people I'm going out. It's just like I'm just gonna go out and show
Yeah.
up. So I try to balance that way, but like I'm not gonna play like I'm always successful.
I like that. I like that transparency. So it's like we're not gonna always get it right. We try to balance, but we're not gonna always get it right.
No.
And I also like the fact that you mentioned like even people without kids. I feel like a lot of times, even with me, like a lot of my friends, well, probably half and half, but I do have friends that also have kids. And so sometimes I feel guilty when I feel like I have a lot going on because it's like that extra measure, you know. Sometimes people with kids feel a little bit like, girl, what are you talking about? You know what I'm saying? I have a whole little person over here depending on me, and you're over here talking about how you don't have enough hours in a day. So I do think that no matter like where you are in life, we all have those different components where we have to balance. But I do take my hat off to those of you that are able to balance with having children and being those super moms.
It's just a different level. It's just a different weight of responsibility.
Yeah.
But responsibility is responsibility.
Absolutely. Well, Tamara, thank you so much.
Yes.
Before we go, let the people know how they can find you and reach you.
Yeah, so Instagram is really the easiest way. It's Love and Fairy Magic, FAERY. That's the easiest way because my link tree is there in the bio, and you can click and look at the podcast, the Love blog, just everything.
All of that.
All
And
the Love and Fairy Magic stuff.
And I can attest that she be knowing, okay? I can speak from experience. She is never wrong. Again, thank you so much. You are such a light, such a gem. And thank you all for watching. Again, this is Gems and Tips, where you can find all things business and finance, beauty and fashion, and wellness. Be sure to like, subscribe, hit that alert button if you haven't already. Until next time.